Welcome to the Litigation Psychology Podcast, brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. Dr. Steve Wood with me, Dr. Bill Kanasky. Bill, how's it going? Looks like you're back in the studio.
Back in the studio. Had to kick a bunch of teenagers out of here. This is not going well. I'm telling you. I mean, I love having the boy back, but it's like a frat house over here. It still stinks. It still stinks. I got him to clean up a little bit, but man, it just smells like dirty feet in here.
No more Chick-fil-A boxes stacked up.
There's one right there. There's one right there in the garbage can. It's like I have a little garbage can for like paper by the desk. That's not a garbage can you put food in. And right now I got Gatorade bottles, a milk carton. That's nice.
That'll be good in about a week.
Candy wrappers. You just wait till my ant problem starts happening. Jeez, it's awful. So yeah, back in the studio, but it's still not exactly where I want it to be.
Well, glad to have you back. Today we're gonna come on and talk more about our cognitive distortions, build on upon what we did on part 1, where we talked about 1 through 5, and we'll get through some more today. But yeah. I know you got something on your mind, as always, right?
Yeah, I got a couple things on my mind, and it's really about wasted time. Do you ever just think, like, from an existential point of view, like just think about how much time you waste, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really big deal. And then as you start aging, you're like, God, I want to make the most of it. Things like that. Two things it happened recently, and I'm trying to not waste time. Some of this is like friendly stuff. For example, like people you email with, you know how many times like the whole please, thank you, you're welcome email. Are you aware of how much of your inbox is taken up by 2-word emails? Thank you, you're welcome.
I'm sure there's a lot.
Okay. A response that says okay. It's like, look at the email. I mean, literally, there's a string of 10 of them, right? You can eliminate 4 of them. 40%, by the way. That you could be doing something else, not replying. Someone says, so with your etiquette, your email etiquette, if somebody says thank you, I just move on. I don't reply and say you're welcome. Do you?
No, not really. No.
Because it's too much. But then we have these you're welcome. I don't know what to label. I guess you're welcome people. You're welcome. And then if I put if I don't respond with no problem, you see where the awkwardness gets here? Yeah, I don't know what the etiquette is. I try to email like a CEO at this point in my life. I'm like, yes, no, goodbye. I don't want more emails. I'm certainly not going to write much of my emails. That's just one waste of time. But the real part about this rant, and I cannot wait to get your thoughts on this. Speaking of waste of time, last night was the MLB All-Star game. And the one thing I will give the MLB, they actually play the game. Like, from a competitive standpoint, relative to the other sports, they actually play the game. I still didn't watch it. I watched the first inning because it was at Dodger Stadium, which I think is cool. Do you know that the All-Star game hasn't been there for like 50 years or something like that? I was shocked.
So it's a great stadium, though.
It's a great stadium, and Dodger Stadium looked fantastic. And I think the American League pulled out 3-2. But there's something on that game, right? It's which is kind of crazy, actually. It's the home field advantage for the World Series, right?
Right.
So you see some now. So is it a waste of time to play the game? Well, they've put some reward on it, so I don't think that's a waste of time. But I mean, have you watched the recent NBA All-Star game, or even worse, the ultimate worst, the NFL All-Pro game?
I stopped watching. I've gone to Hawaii and watched the Pro Bowl, but I haven't watched it much lately.
How they charge people to go into that, and the NBA is even worse. Like the score of the All-Star game, like 240 to 210.
Yeah,
right. Nothing going on there. But why now? And in the college ranks, right? If you do really well, like you're all conference, right? All American. And what do? They give you a plaque or whatever. You get your name. They don't play a game, right? I mean, am I off? Why can't the NFL just say, hey, you made the Pro Bowl, congratulations, here's your bonus, but they go out there on it's an utter waste of time. And it's
for the fans, Bill. It's for the fans.
Is it really though? Is it real? I'm going nowhere with this argument. I'm just saying all-star games should just be eliminated. They've wanted to eliminate the NFL Pro Bowl for some time. Goodell won't have any of that. It's dumb. No one, they don't even tackle. They should just make it flag football.
There you go.
What they should do. And at least they would, they would do something. But yeah, let's get into these cognitive because I'm gonna lose my mind here. So, and if I email you and say thank you, please don't. Or if I don't say thank you, don't take that personally. I'm just trying to save you some time.
Well, I appreciate it.
This is absolutely going. This could be the worst rant ever.
Let's save the listeners some time and dive into.
Okay, speaking of waste of time, would be this rant. Okay, let's get back in the cognitive distortions. I got my list up. Now, some of these are very close to each other, but they are distinct. So we have to when we give examples here, we have to be careful. But number 5, catastrophizing. We didn't do catastrophizing last time, did we? I think we just did 1 through 4.
I thought we did 1 through 5, but
did we do 1 through 5? I think maybe we did do 1 through 5. Well,
yeah, we did.
5 is catastrophizing. There you go. Now, I think it's worth repeating catastrophizing because it happens so often. Oh my gosh. Yeah. All these, negative facts in the case, extreme anxiety. And, that witness just overvalues the negative. Yeah. I think we ended on that last time. But let's go to number 6. Number 6, personalization. Now, personalization is a cognitive distortion where, and this can get really bad, Steve, where it sounds like it is your witness in the case takes the litigation personally, right? They think the plaintiff is coming after them personally, and they really forget that this is more of a money grab. They really feel that either the plaintiff themselves or the plaintiff attorney is specifically out to get them and just ruin their lives, as opposed to going, for the insurance money. And I find these witnesses to be really difficult to work with. I've seen this a lot. I've seen this a lot in kind of more small town America. We do med mal cases in small towns. Why? Because you got an OB in even does just, you don't have to be in a metropolitan place. You can be in a small town somewhere, and there's still med mal litigation. There's still product liability, still employment lawsuits. But in small town litigation where everybody knows everybody, I see this happening. And I had this case in Indiana where this doctor got sued by somebody he's known for 30 years, and he was epically like, I can't, but they're jealous of me and they want to ruin my business, and really had nothing to do with medicine. Steve, how do you typically handle these types of witnesses that they just take it really, really personally, when in most cases it's more of a money grab?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, those are one of the more difficult ones to train because they're hyper emotional, hyper angry, and they're the ones that no matter how much you tell them, don't take the bait, they want to take the bait. And anytime we're talking about threat facts or anytime we're talking about anything negative, they instantly want to go into this fight or flight mode and get upset and frustrated. So, I mean, I think the best way to do that, obviously, is, as we always talk about, kind of letting them dump their emotions first. Yeah. And then slowly starting to build them up, and then essentially show them how this is really a money grab, get them to understand this is a money grab. And if you play into that emotion, if you play into that anger and aggression that you have towards them, they're going to succeed in essentially ruining your life. And they're going to succeed in taking a lot of money out of your pocket, or the hospital's pocket, or the company's pocket, whoever it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Something that doesn't happen a lot, but when it happens, talk about taking something personal, is that, the plaintiff is allowed to show up to the deposition. It rarely happens, but man, when it does, that's really, really hard for the defendant. So defense need to be ready for that, even though it typically doesn't happen. But there are cases in which that does happen.
Yeah, I can think of one right off the top of my head I just did recently where the plaintiff was almost surely going to show up. And the witness found out, then obviously the tone changed a little bit different, saying, really, they're going to be there, and to say, yeah, you're going to have to testify and you're going to have to push back on issues that plaintiff counsel brings up when the person is essentially to the left of you in your eyesight when you're being deposed.
Yeah, that is hard. And no, the other thing I've seen here, which I don't think we've ever talked about this, is a adverse co-defendant making it personal. Now, I see that happen a lot, particularly, or an expert, or it's an expert witness making it personal, because a lot of times it's a turf battle, right? Between, particularly in medicine, where you have one cardiologist going up against another cardiologist. So there are areas here where the personalization part is really illogical. However, I can see some instances where it's a little bit more logical, particularly if it's a co-defendant and there may be more of a kind of a one person is trying to eat into another person's business. It can get that way. So I think number 6, and I think this one's a little tricky, but I think in most cases it's irrational. So again, yeah, we need to reframe that. Reframe it with the witness saying, no, that's not what this is about. You know, this is really about a financial gain here. It's not about ruining your life or keeping you up until 3:30 in the morning every night. And again, talk to that witness. Number 7, blaming. This occurs when the witness, and boy, we've seen so many of these.
Yeah.
The witness just refuses to take responsibility for any of their own actions. And I mean, just blames anybody and everybody else. I mean, others at the company, the plaintiff, empty chair, third party, and just absolutely refuses to even acknowledge that they did anything, much less anything, wrong. And they just deflect. It's my experience that jurors don't like witnesses that are finger pointers. What do you think, Steve?
That's about one of the worst things that they can do. I mean, talk about pissing off a jury is get a bunch of people up there and have them start finger pointing at everyone else and trying to throw all of their colleagues underneath the bus and trying to get themselves to save their own skin. I mean, it looks horrible. Yeah. It's one of the worst things. And I think plaintiff counsel would love nothing more than to do that, which is why we always talk about when we work with witnesses.
Yeah.
Is unless there's some strategic advantage that we're not seeing or that, the client wants to do, stay the heck away from any sort of finger pointing.
I tell you what, and it happens. So, I mean, boy, there is this temptation to blame the plaintiff.
Yeah.
Where we have, and I think what you have to do here is educate the witness to say, hey, we have an expert that will come in and do all the blaming. Why? That's the expert's job. We don't want you doing the blaming. But I find that witnesses really struggle with this because they're emotional. And it kind of mixes with number 6. They take it very personally, and then they want to fire back blame. And in some of these cases, Steve, the plaintiff should be a target of culpability. But the fact witness needs to understand it's not their job to do the finger pointing. We will have an expert come in and do that for them. So blaming's a big one, and it can go again. It could go within, but it could also go across the table at the plaintiff. Let's see. That's number 7. Number 8, labeling. It's so yeah, plaintiff counsel they're trying to label the witness as it is, right? Label them as inaccurate or careless or reckless or, negligent, whatever. But then you get witnesses, particularly where cases where maybe a mistake was made. It does not automatically mean negligent, but then they start with this kind of irrational labeling of their own behavior, and they start name calling to themselves, right? I'm an idiot, I'm a terrible person, I'm incompetent, I don't know what I'm doing, I blew it, I'm the worst employee ever. And boy, that's a downward spiral. And we're talking about this. Typically, this can often happen when it's It's one, like, a nurse doesn't document something in the chart, one thing. And then before I'm the worst nurse in the world, blah, 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 blah. And then it just does not stop. Steve, what are your thoughts on this? Because I find that, once a witness starts calling themselves names, that's a deep hole for them to get out of. And I prefer not to let them get there in the first place.
Yeah, and there's been times I've actually stopped just the training and I've spent probably an hour, hour and a half with this witness, almost having like a therapy session with them and having to kind of recoach them to make them see that the mistake that they made was not the end all be all mistake. And they were operating off of the information that they had at the time. And it was the best decision they could make at the time. And sure, you can look back at it and make different decisions. You just have to get them to a point where they see and essentially don't buy into the plaintiff's idea of the woulda, coulda, shoulda. If you just did this or that, this whole thing would have been avoided. And most of that is all purely speculative anyway. So you just got to help them understand that they're not bad. They're not a terrible person. And had they done it differently, there's no guarantee that the outcome would have been different at all.
Yeah. And I think this labeling is really, when they start actually calling themselves names, I think it's the worst of the worst. That's somebody that's really, really down on themselves. And these are the types of witnesses that I think fall on the sword pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Will admit negligence, even though negligence may not really be there, or causation. I think that's the problem here. Nurses are the worst, but we see it in other cases, is where there may be something that went wrong. And we always talk about how the jurors always jump from, right? They go from negligence right to they just assume causation. Well, so did the damn witnesses, right? And so you get a witness and it's like, okay, well, you didn't do X, Y, or Z. And then the witness themselves start they start assuming causation. And so we spend all this time trying to help attorneys create arguments to explain causation to jurors. And the thing is, you got to make the same arguments to convince your own damn witness. Otherwise, the witness, once they start calling themselves names because they made a mistake, I mean, they're just going to cave on causation too, right?
Yeah. They're not, like you said, they're going to feel cathartic, right? To say, yep, you're right. I'm going to fall on the sword and take all the blame and make themselves feel better. But like you said, it's water they don't need to carry. It's, beating themselves up for something that they don't need to beat themselves up for.
Yeah. So watch out. If you see that witness calling themselves names and kind of really beating themselves up, that is a big time problem. Number 9, always being right.
Oh, never seen this before.
Yeah, I know, right? Now this is related to one of our previous ones, but again, this occurs when the witness has the emotional need to be right or to have an answer to everything. Now, again, this tends to happen with those high-level executives, CEOs, C-level executives, supervisors, high-level physicians, surgeons, right? Where it's just, they got to be right. I mean, you can show them it's wrong and they will argue with you. And they have to have an answer for everything. And no witness in any litigation has the answer for every single question, number one. And number two, there is no perfect conduct. And, I think particularly there's a sense of, threat here when you have these powerful people, they're being threatened by plaintiff's counsel. And there's this kind of occupational need, right, for these witnesses. I mean, everybody looks up to these people, right? They got to be right? But then they drag that into litigation. Can be a big problem. You see this a lot with the higher level corporate people, Steve?
Yeah, definitely the higher level ones. And they're always the ones that are the most susceptible to when plaintiff counsel pushes back and says, wait, so let me get this straight. You're, you're the 30B6 witness, or you're the CEO of this company and you're telling me you don't know the answer to this? I mean, this is a simple
Yeah.
question. You're telling me you don't know the answer. And, the more they push, the more that, you get those people to then just go ahead and offer up the information because, they're used to being the ones that are supposed to have the answers. And there's an expectation that they're supposed to have the answers. Or if they don't, they feel like there's an expectation that they have to go out and find it. So that's why sometimes you'll get that
Yeah.
too, is I don't know, but I can get that answer for you. Well, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that's right. Now remember, number one on this list is polarized thinking. And this is very similar because remember, that's the type of witness that has to be perfect with their testimony, right? This is a little bit different because this is the need to be right. And not everybody's right. And these people will argue with you, even if you present something that's counter to their argument, that's factual, they will argue with you. And they got to be right, and they have to have an answer to everything. It's really, really dangerous. Again, it's mostly with those higher level people. And again, the cognitive reframe there is to make them understand, well, A, it's not necessary to be right with everything. Number two, that's not very believable to jurors. I don't think jurors like those types of people that are always right.
The know-it-alls.
They have to be. Yeah. So there's a difference between Mr. and Mrs. Perfect versus Mr. and Mrs. Right. Yeah. And that's the difference between number 1 and number 9 here. This is more of a being correct about everything or having that correct answer every time. And regardless, even if you don't have the answer, it's okay not to know something, folks. It's okay not to know. There are other witnesses, but man, yeah, that can be a tough one. And then finally, number 10, and then we'll pick up with 11 next time. Using should statements. This is terrible, Steve. We're going to end with this one, but this is bad. What you and I would call, blame issues here. When the witness falls into the trap of second guessing themselves, bad things happen. I mean, bad things happen. You and I call this, like the rest of the world, the whole Monday morning quarterback effect, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, radio Monday mornings, I mean, particularly in the fall, right? Every sports radio show, they're second guessing everything that every coach did all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And that's what people do too. That's how their brains are wired. And this can get really dangerous because, I mean, a really good plaintiff attorney can manipulate a witness into admitting liability. And I see this a lot with witnesses that feel guilty about if there's a bad outcome, right?
Yeah.
And they feel guilty about what happened. And they want to say that they remember, you can always do something more. You can always do something faster. You could always do something better. You could always do something different. And it's like, it makes them feel better to say that, but that could add gazillions of dollars to the case, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't help for you to go ahead and admit liability just because you believe it.
I mean, and that's, so the word, I mean, particularly in deposition, when you get well, you should have done this and you should have done that. Boy, that answer better be no. The answer, the witness needs to understand and say, hey, now could you have major difference between could and should, right?
Yeah.
I mean, could you have done X instead of Y? Well, yeah, of course. Okay. But, and the answer really is, once it starts going down the line, is, I did X because I felt that was the most appropriate decision at the time based on what I knew, right? Depending on those circumstances. The problem is this hindsight bias. Is witnesses look back, oh no, I blew it. Oh shit, I should have did Y. I should have did Z instead of X. And I don't think correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think witnesses understand the legal implication of saying yes to should have questions.
I don't know. They don't. No.
It's a nuclear bomb.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's easy, to your point about going back, and everybody always wants to second guess their behaviors, and everybody wants to go back. And to your point, it's a cognitive mistake to think that the outcome, once you've already seen what the outcome is, to believe that probability of that outcome was going to be a lot higher than what it was. It's only that you're operating off of the fact that you know that that's actually what the outcome was. To your point, right? The whole football Monday morning quarterback, Bill Belichick has how many years experience calling plays and this, that, and the other. He's using his down distance percentages, his years of experience to make a decision that may or may not work. But at the end of the day, he was using all those factors to make that decision. Same thing with a physician or someone else or a nurse who's been using 20 years of their information that they have to make a decision.
Yeah. I think the worst one was the, which is still painful for any Seattle fan of the Seahawks when they threw. I mean, you're running Marshawn Lynch, he's getting 10 yards to carry, and then they throw the ball, throw the pick on the goal line, and boy, Pete Carroll got just absolutely blasted for that. But to this day, and he said, I don't regret making that call. We saw them make some adjustments to Lynch, and we saw the film. We thought based on what we were seeing, that was going to be a really good play for us. And it turned out not to be, but I don't regret running that play. Whereas the other 7 million people are saying, why in the world did you throw the ball? He never budged. But I think that's what the witness needs to do is this. They need to do the Pete Carroll saying, listen, I ran the play that was appropriate at the time. It didn't work out. It didn't work out. Could I have run a different play? Absolutely. Should I have? No. I stick by my decision. And I think that's really, really tough for witnesses in the face of a bad outcome. Yeah. In the face of a bad outcome. And that's the problem there is witnesses don't want to say, I stick with my decision, because then the follow-up question is, wait a second. You see the outcome here, right? Car accident, trucking, whatever, med-mal, product, whatever it is. Yeah, you see the outcome here. You're still telling me you stick with your decision, and the witness has to have the mental and emotional fortitude to say, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. But boy, you get some of that emotion in there and that guilt, particularly guilt. That's when I see a lot of witnesses break down and I guess you're right. I should have. And then before you know it, those are million, billion, sometimes $1 billion answers that can lead to real trouble.
Well, I think to go back and to use the Pete Carroll example and the Seahawks example, what if they would have stacked the box? They would have ran Marshawn Lynch and they would have stuffed him. Then we would have been.
And he fumbled. What if he would have fumbled?
What
if he would have fumbled? I mean, I know. And so there's a lot that could have happened. So I think working with witnesses from an emotional standpoint, to be emotionally okay with those answers is really important, because what's going to happen is they may have the strength to say no to those questions. No, I don't think I should have done something else. I stick with what I did based on those circumstances. The problem is, they're going to get pushed out of this repetition and some emotional attacks coming. The witness needs to be trained to be consistent, stick with that answer, and not bend. Okay, so we're through. What number was that? Was that?
That was 10. We are through.
That was 10. So we got 11, 12, and 13 coming up next time. But again, all of these, I know some of these sound like they overlap, and maybe they even do to extent, but they do have their distinct factors. And I think these are really important for defense counsel to, as they're assessing their witnesses, to try to tap into some of these to see if some of these cognitive distortions exist, because if they do, can have a drastic impact on the quality of the testimony.
And I think one other thing that we talk about consistently, and I think I'll harp on now and probably mention again while we're wrapping up this next time, but all of this shows that the whole idea of meeting with witnesses an hour before the deposition or meeting with them for a couple hours, it's just not going to be. I mean, witnesses need to be prepared to spend a significant portion of time getting trained, right? Because that's what we said. If you had any of these emotional issues, you're going to have to spend at least an hour and a half getting rid of those before you even get into the training. So the idea of an hour or 2 hours is just not going to be sufficient.
It's not going to be successful. And I've seen, again, I hear so many defense counsel, say I've worked hours with this witness and they're working on the file, the documents, right? And yeah, that's really, really important. All the stuff we're talking about has nothing to do with document review.
Right.
They could have perfect document review and really, really bomb at dep or trial. 100% due to psychological issues that we've been talking about, cognitive issues, emotional issues, behavioral issues. That's what's tanking the testimony. It's not, very rarely is it a lack of preparation. Now, when you get that kind of former employee, right? Yeah, they may not be coming prepared. They're coming in double middle finger.
Yeah.
Screw you, right? They may not be, but in the vast majority of cases, you don't see unprepared witnesses on case content, right? And document review. You see them psychologically unprepared. And that's where we come in. And again, those factors, if they're exploited, could cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. But if they're assessed right and fixed, can save millions and millions of dollars. And so that's why what we do is so important, right, Steve?
Yep. So, and then we'll make sure, like I said, we'll come back. We'll finish out with 11 through 13 on another episode. And hopefully we can help to alleviate some of these nuclear verdicts and help witnesses not step in it and cause a lot more problems than they need to.
And speaking of nuclear, hey, I'm in Florida, but you're in Texas. I heard a rumor today. Now you tell me this is, I heard the temperature in Texas today, like north of Dallas, 195 degrees. Is that true?
195, it feels like
195. 195. That was like the heat. I'm just kidding. I heard it was like 109.
It is though. Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah. You don't want to go outside. It's oppressive heat. So
that's really, really bad. I mean, see, Florida, we're so humid. It rarely breaks 100. So, we'll be like between that, 92 and 96. And you walk out to get your mail, you come in, you're soaking wet. That type of stuff. It rains every day between 2 and 4, but man, 108, 109, 110, I've been reading stuff on that. That cannot be good. Can't be good for your pet, right?
No, it's not. They stay out, they stay inside, and then they go out for about 2 minutes and then they come back in.
Man.
So
I'm gonna rant on pets next week. Wait till next week. I have an epic rant on pets because I got my all I was gonna say is
we'll leave them with tease of next week's
I'm just gonna leave it at this. Pets are very expensive, and I'm gonna go over some of my shopping list items and what they cost, including my vet bill. And it's going to, you thought kids were expensive?
Well, it's
astronomical.
That was a good segue into next week's then. So we'll leave it at that. Thanks for joining. This has been another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast brought to you by Courtroom Sciences.